Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Also joined by my colleague and my dear friend, the great Matt Hladek from thespun.com, editor and publisher of thespun.com. I keep saying this every week, and I've said it. We've been doing this show now for close to 13 years. I found the Spun, excuse me, because when you cover a team, like I'm a beat writer for the Raiders, I'm in bed with the Raiders. I'm not even paying attention to you. If it's outside the Raiders, it gets minimal amount of my attention in the world of sports. And then what does is NFL, but still ancillary, and nothing outside of it gets it during the season. And so I found it one time because there was something going on. I think it was in golf, and it was a big story. And I Googled it, and it came to the spun.com. It is all of the best trending topics in every sport are on there if it's big enough. Go check it out. Make it part of your favorites. I actually visit it every morning. It's super good. Matt, how you doing, friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the plug. That's kind of what we try to do. We try to give you a little bit of everything.
You know, the our podcast is growing exponentially. Tens of thousands of people are watching it. Incredible to me. I'm appreciative for everybody that is, and we love to get into a bunch of topics. Today we're going to talk about Max Crosby, who last week on the Von Miller podcast said he would not be shocked if something catastrophic happened. I'm not quoting, I'm just giving a rough quote. And everything went bad, and Tom Brady played for the Raiders. Now, I've said this too. They've got Jimmy. Jimmy's going to be healthy. But let's say they start the season 6-3 or whatever, 5-4, whatever it may be. But there's somewhere where they're going to be in the hunt, and Jimmy goes down. I don't think that Jimmy's going to. I think he's going to be ready for the beginning of the season. Everybody thinks that. Everybody I've talked to thinks that. So this isn't saying that. But let's just say maybe he's walking on the sidewalk and hurts himself again and can't play. I would not be shocked if Tom Brady came back, and Max Crosby saying that, I think, put a little bit of fire under some folk. Will you talk about that, please?
Yeah, and again, I want to make sure if you didn't see the comments or hear the comments, whatever, Max Crosby said, he was asked about Tom Brady being an owner of the Raiders now and being around the team, and he said that he was asked about the possibility of him playing, and he said, we have Jimmy G. Jimmy G's the guy. He's going to be back. He's going to be healthy. So it's not. They're expecting him to be back and pass his physical and be ready to go for in the summer. Be ready to go for week one. So it wasn't something like that. Like he was predicting Brady will come out of retirement. Then he was saying if things go catastrophically bad or there's a major problem, then I could see Brady, because of the competitor that he is, coming back and playing. He wouldn't say it'd be totally out of the question. And listen, Tom Brady has said, I'm done, I'm done. And just don't think how it is with guys who have played a long time and they retire and come back. Like, people will never believe they're actually done. It was like this with Brett Favre because he came back a couple times. It was like this with Michael Jordan because he came back. People were not uh, willing to believe that he was really good, done. And I think that's what's going on here with Tom Brady. People are thinking that, hey, I could see him coming back and playing. And I think the scenario where you mentioned is one where it would make the most sense if it were to happen. Because, listen, if the Raiders are, let's say they're 5-7, I don't know, let's say something like that. Things aren't going well. They have 5 games left. Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt. If that's the case, then I think you'll see maybe Brian Hoyer immediately take over, and you'll see Aiden O'Connell play a lot down
Mm-hmm.
the stretch to see what you have in him. However,
Correct.
have you in the past, like in Jimmy Garoppolo's career, look at last year with 5-6 games left on a good Niners team, he gets hurt and Brock Purdy has to step in. If the Raiders are 7-4, 8-4, and they're doing well and they're in the playoff hunt, you're gonna see the the calls, and Jimmy were to get hurt, you're going to see the calls for Brady to be available and Brady to come back and play. And that's where I think the scenario would make the most sense.
I agree. So, Matt, the Raiders got all their players signed. And I think one of the smartest things the NFL did was years ago the slotting of rookies, let more money go to the veterans, because I think it was ridiculous with some of the. No, wait, I'm a free market capitalist. So even though I think it's ridiculous, and if I were an owner, I wouldn't have paid that money. God bless anybody that wants to do it, it's their money. But I think it makes the game better that all your rookies are under contract, all your rookies will be in training camp. There isn't, there's always going to be that one guy holding out, maybe want to negotiate on a fifth year option or whatever. But for the most part, I think this makes the NFL a better league. I think it makes the Raiders better. Your thoughts on that, please?
Well, obviously, one of the ways that it probably was a negative for players is especially with rookie quarterbacks that went in the first round because they can't get some of the bigger deals um, adjusted for modern times. The way that guys like Sam Bradford got and Matthew Stafford and going back even further. On a positive note, like you said, though, when there's those scales are implemented and everything's put in, it does make things more uniform. It makes it easier for teams to get the players into the fold. You're not worrying about, do I have to outbid another team for my guy because they see what so and so signed for? Um, no, you just know this is what you know what the pool looks like. This is what your range is going to be, and that's what you sign for. So I do think, from a practical sense, it made a lot of sense for the NFL to do it. Obviously, I know the players would probably love to come in and be able to make unlimited money right away in the league. But I understand why the NFL did it, and I think that it does make some sense in terms of how they structure their contracts and structure their rosters.
Matt, one of the things that the Raiders are doing, and I admire, is they're really making a push. Youth, UDFAs, guys that we pick. So we've got them here on long-term deals that are beneficial to the team. And to be a champion in this league, you're not having a bunch of Devontae Adams. You're not going to have a bunch of Tom Brady's. You can't have a bunch of Max Crosby's. You've got to be super good at picking and plugging with free agents. And then you've got to go out and draft well, because those UDFAs, man, you got them on a 4-year deal and it's easy money and it's cheap and they're playing. I really like the way that we're seeing the way Dave Ziegler is managing the cap, managing the roster. They had 2 UDFAs make it last year, Sam Webb and Luke Masterson. I had some others that played, but those two were big. And I think 2 of them are going to make the team this year. I just did my post OTA 53-man roster. I think Drake Thomas, the linebacker out of North Carolina State, and McClendon Curtis, the offensive lineman out of UT Chattanooga. I just like the way they're building it. They're being so salary cap disciplined and efficient. Your thoughts on what they're doing?
Well, again, like you said, anytime you're in a capped league, you can't spend unlimited amount of salary at each position. You have to pick and choose where you're going to spend your big money. And you may know that, okay, we have a quarterback coming up for an extension. We're going to have to pay him, or we're going to go out and trade for a big time wide receiver like Devontae Adams. We have to have that money available. The key in the NFL is to how you round out your roster with contributors on day 2 and 3 of the NFL draft, and in undrafted either UDFAs or value free agency guys that are contribute on special teams, guys that can crack a rotation at defensive line, guys that can be the second tight end and also play on different kick units and things like that, and or nickel backs, and they guys that are role players that come for cheap, relatively speaking, and compared to their NFL peers, and that kind of cost efficient method of team building. Everyone tries to do it. Obviously, I think the Raiders, you would think that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler kind of bringing their philosophies over from New England. New England for years got good production out of guys who weren't necessarily highly drafted or highly paid. Of course, again, like we said, they had Tom Brady, who makes everything better, and it makes it easier to build around a guy like that. But you still, no matter who your quarterback is, you have to be able to find those contributors for at a bargain price, and I think that's what the Raiders are going for.
Agree with you. All right, I want now to hit you on. I'm going to read you some comments that Derek Carr made to the Associated Press, and I want you to give me your thoughts. I'm going to give you mine. He said, "Quote: They just didn't get my best, and that drove me crazy at the end of the year because I felt so spread out in so many different ways. I just didn't feel like myself, and I feel bad for the Raiders coaches and players." Your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought that was a really kind of surprisingly candid response you see from NFL guys. A lot of times, guys aren't going to be that open about, hey, I didn't do my best at the end of the season or the end of my time with a team, and I apologize for that. I think first and foremost, I think it does show you the respect level he had, for Raiders fans that he developed over his 9 seasons there. If he felt enough to apologize for them and apologize to the organization for not giving his best. I think it was a combination of things like which we've talked about a lot of the time on this show. I think the way last season was going, Derek Carr kind of knew his time was up. He knew he was coming to the end in Vegas, and he was going to be looking to play elsewhere this year. So I think when that's happening, and you have a new head coach, and the head coach is building things his way, and there's injuries, or there's guys are not performing around you what you're used to, and then you're not maybe performing the way you're used to. It's very easy to kind of feel scattered or spread out the way that Derek Carr said he did. So I kind of commend him for coming forward and saying that, candidly, and admitting it. But I'm not surprised that he felt that he was not up to par by the end of last season.
I agree. I want to go now to as I alluded, I earlier this week, yesterday, had my post off-season mini camp OTA 53-man roster. I had 2 UDFAs, and I had all the rookies making it. And of the 53-man roster, I had 26 that weren't on there last year. What does that say to you about how the Raiders have revamped their roster? We're not talking about the money side. We already talked about the financial accountability. But what's that tell you about how they've revamped their roster?
Well, if you end up churning over and overturning half of your roster, which was what it would be if that prediction holds for in one off season, that's a lot, and that tells me that you are not necessarily building, but you're retooling, you're rebuilding, because you're looking to find the pieces that you're going to build your franchise around. You're looking to find the combination. If you have that core in place and you're set and you're building, or maybe you'll have 10, 12 different guys from year to year, depending on how many free agents. Well, probably a little more than that, because if all your draft picks make it, but 15 guys or something like that, let's say. But if you're up 26, 27 of your 53-man roster changing over or more, that says that you're not satisfied with the way things are or were, and you're really looking to make some changes, and you're hoping that you could find some more building blocks. Now, if that happens, and they flip over half their roster, fine. If that happens again in 2024, then it's a problem. Mm-hmm. Because if you're flipping over your half of your roster or more every single year, then you're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall. Yes, exactly. So I think by doing it, if that happens this offseason, they do what you're projecting. That tells me that they are not satisfied with what they've had in the past, and they're looking to find that core group of guys to grow with and build with. If they're doing it again in 2024, then it's the red flags are shooting off. It's a problem.
It is a nightmare in the desert, isn't it?
It would be, yes.
Okay, Matt, as always, I really appreciate you taking time to join us. Last question I want to get to, and I think it's a big one, is the running backs. Josh Jacobs is holding out. Saquon Barkley said, man, this isn't right. You've seen other running backs talk about it. Dalvin Cook's on the market. He didn't sign. He hasn't signed real quick, at least at the time of this taping, he hadn't signed. I know he's talking to some teams. Everybody thinks he's going to end up in Miami, but he's trying to let there be a market, and it's not like they think. Is it time for running backs to come to reality and understand you don't have a big shelf life? Teams aren't going to overpay. Or is it a time for the running backs to come together and say, "No, we got to stick together for the long term"? To me, I think it's the first one. What's your thoughts?
I don't think the second option can happen because of the fact that I don't know if you're getting a widespread commitment from guys around the league for something like that, especially when they're all guys are on different stages of their contract. Some guys are on have different kinds of contracts, so they might have just gotten paid, so they're not really in the interest of holding out or making a statement. Other guys are just starting out in the league, and they're not even thinking about their next contract to that extent just yet. So I don't know if there's a way to really get the point across, especially when if you look in the past, and we mentioned him before, the last example of a running back who held out for an entire season is Le'Veon Bell, and it didn't work out well for him. So like I said, I still expect Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley to play in 2023. Whether they agree to new deals before week one or not, I think they will play in 2023 because I just don't think when all said and done, I think even if guys don't like the franchise tag, don't want to play on it, it's better than just sitting an entire year. But I don't see, the running back bubble has burst, so to speak, the market. And I don't foresee it changing anytime soon, really, because listen, there's some special backs out there, some guys that are really talented and are really major focal points of their team's offenses, including Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs. But if they're not getting what they want on the open market, and a guy like Dalvin Cook is expendable, I don't know what will make it change. Yeah, you still see some teams, value running backs high in the draft. Bijan Robinson goes in the top 10. Jahmyr Gibbs goes to the Lions at 11 or 13 or wherever he went. So it's not like the running backs are completely forgotten. But with the way things are trending and the way the position's being de-emphasized, at least from a money standpoint, I'm not sure how the current group of running backs could flip the switch and get things reversed for the future.
I agree with you 100%, Matt. Now, lastly, and well, not last, actually, two more things, but I was talking to an NFL owner once. This was a while ago. Was it Mark Davis? Who we were talking about contracts and negotiations and strikes and all this. And obviously, the NFL has a long term deal, so there's nothing for them to worry about. But they said to me, we always win because at the end of the day, a lot of players are not good with their money. And when it starts hitting their checking account, that tells you how long ago it was. But when they starts hitting their checking account and they don't have the money, he said they cave. I thought that was an unique insight into maybe how ownership feels, but it's a unique insight into the collective bargaining and how the NFL operates, isn't it?
It is, and I think when you look at it, it isn't just even about some guys aren't good with their money. When you're a professional athlete, you only have a limited amount of time to make your money, especially in a game like
Correct.
football, where your physical shelf life is shorter than other sports, and one play can end things or put you in a hole. So if you only have that a limited time to of earning power for your physical abilities, you have to capitalize on it as much as possible. Sometimes that means, yeah, holding out and seeking a better deal, the best deal possible. But other times it means it it gives the owners leverage when they're going against a player in contract negotiations or against in the CBA negotiations, because guys are saying, hey, maybe I'm not 100% happy with my working arrangements or my contract or whatever, but I could still make, 800 grand this season or 1 point whatever million or 2.3 point whatever million. And I don't know how many more years I'm going to be able to do that. So that's where I think that is something that's over the heads of players too. Even more so probably than some of them not being great with managing their money.
Agree with you. As always, the great Matt Holadik from thespun.com. I'm Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Thank you for being with us, Matthew.
Anytime, always my pleasure.
Appreciate you, buddy. There you go, everybody. We'll see you again next time.